Welcome to AFOA Canada's second webinar in our series themed Resiliency in Challenging Times. We are sharing resources and information that can help you navigate through the ever-changing events during this unprecedented time. If you have any questions during the presentation, please add them to the Q&A or chat window. There'll be a 15 or 20-minute Q&A session at the end of the presentation. There will also be polling questions throughout the webinar, so please submit your answers. And please visit our website for more information to view the recordings and slides that will be added to our webinar page. Today, our presentation is on human resources, returning to work during COVID-19, building a resilient workforce. As the situation with COVID-19 continues to disrupt workplaces everywhere, the focus for many organizations is shifting to ways to support and developing resiliency in their employees. Studies have found that more resilient people are higher performers, respond better to change, and are able to protect themselves from stress more effectively. It is no surprise, therefore, that many organizations are investing in tools and practices to develop resiliency in their staff. Whether your employees have returned to the office, are still working from home, or a hybrid of the two, there are active steps that your organization can take to support your people. This webinar will walk you through the best practice ideas for creating an environment that fosters resiliency and provide practical tools that you can apply immediately to support your staff. The webinar will be presented by Tanya Neitzert and Catherine Evans, partners at Borealis Management. Tanya is a seasoned HR practitioner with 20 years of experience. She has led HR teams in the technology, sales, education, and manufacturing sectors for organizations of all sectors and sizes. She is widely recognized as an excellent communicator and relationship builder with an ability to drive HR teams to higher levels of organizational credibility. Her background includes a healthy balance of strategic and operational HR experience, and Tanya has a proven track record of driving HR to partner with business to achieve higher levels of engagement and bottom line success. Since 2016, Tanya has been part of Borealis Management's senior leadership team as an account manager and consultant to many Indigenous client groups. She partners with HR professionals at all levels, assisting them to align HR operations to the core needs of their organizations and coaching them on foundational HR competencies. Tanya holds a BA from Concordia University, a certificate in human resources from McGill University, and is a member of the Ordre de Conseil and Ressources Humaines Agréé. She is an accredited facilitator and is also a certified policy change management practitioner. Catherine Evans is a passionate consultant and management professional with more than 20 years of experience. Catherine has worked with clients ranging from global organizations to small family-owned businesses and public sector entities. Her ability to identify the root cause of issues and create effective solutions that address client needs and expectations has enabled her to develop meaningful and trusted relationships with her clients. Catherine's expertise spans strategy, governance, culture, organizational diagnostic and design, process improvement, and change management. Recognized for her honesty and integrity, Catherine is a seasoned facilitator who can engage individuals at all levels of an organization to help them achieve their immediate and long-term goals. Catherine has supported many Indigenous clients in their strategy and organizational effectiveness needs. Her clients include the Cree School Board, Cree Board of Health and Social Services of James Bay, the Cree of Mississippi, Ujibugabo Cree Nation, and Katvik School Board. Catherine holds an MBA from HEC Montreal and a BA from McGill University. She's an accredited facilitator and is a Prosky certified change management practitioner. Welcome to AFOA Canada's second webinar series. Over to you, Catherine.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Catherine Evans, and I'm a partner at Borealis Management. I'll be joined shortly by my partner, Tanya. This is, in fact, our re-recording of a webinar that took place last week that we did in collaboration with the AFOA. Due to certain technical difficulties, we've decided to re-record the session. Before we get started on the topic of today, which is building resiliency, we wanted to introduce Borealis and share a little bit of information about what we do. We are, in fact, a growing consulting company based out of Montreal. We specialize in human resources and organizational development. We work with clients right across the country, although we are headquartered in Montreal, as I mentioned. We have a diverse team of subject matter experts in various topics, and we offer consulting services in 6 main areas or 6 main service lines: strategy and culture, team engagement, organizational effectiveness and governance, human resource fundamentals, talent management, compensation, organizational transformation, and change management. In addition to our consulting services, we also offer training and expert facilitation services. Although we work with clients from different types of organizations, from global organizations to small and medium size organizations, we do specialize and have extensive knowledge in working with Indigenous organizations across the country. These could be school boards, health boards, local entities, regional governments. Of course, all of our work is centered on and built on the foundation of our mission, which is your organizational knowledge, our clients' organizational knowledge, our subject matter expertise in the area of HR, organizational development, which leads to, of course, or results in a collaboration for sustained success. Studies have shown that developing resiliency in a workplace will help an organization navigate through turbulent times, and will also help an organization come out stronger from these turbulent times. What we want to do is ensure that an organization bounces back more quickly, and ultimately, building resiliency within your organization will also increase efficiencies and ensure better results. We often hear how high-performing organizations have been able to successfully build a culture of a resilient culture, a resilient workplace. Also, multiple studies have shown that building resilience in the workplace will help employees overcome stress, will lead to a happier workforce, and obviously, therefore, overall increased productivity. This has never been more true than in the current context of the COVID pandemic, where organizations and their workforce are faced with not only their day-to-day stresses, but ongoing uncertainty around the current situation. We are seeing and hearing more and more about how these impacts are affecting employees and workforces on a personal and also on a professional level. So what is resiliency? As change management experts and practitioners, we collaborate very closely with our clients to assess and analyze how their organization can better manage change. This involves looking at the organization's readiness for change, but also looking at the capacity for change. Resiliency, of course, is a fundamental component of this context, as it speaks to the ability to recover or adjust to adversity or change. Resiliency can be built by attitudes, behaviors, and social support. And these can be adopted by anyone and should be fostered in any organization. Factors that can lead to resiliency include optimism, the ability to stay positive, to look for the silver lining, and the ability, of course, to manage strong emotions. Resiliency is a learned ability, one that can be learned and built and developed by anyone. Resilient people not only survive and bounce back after a setback, but they come back stronger and wiser. People that are highly resilient are excellent at finding the silver lining in any situation, and they excel in finding the lesson that each negative experience will bring. So no matter what your return to work looks like in your current context, whether it be that you're already back in the office, or that you are planning to head back to the office, or something in between, building resilience is crucial as we continue to face the challenges of the current context. So what are some of the ways that you can build resilience in your workforce? Building resilience can best be developed by building a strong and trusting employee culture. Through taking a proactive and intentional approach in your organization, you can build resiliency in your employees. Over the next few slides, Tanya and I are going to walk you through ways to build resilience in your workforce. The concept that we will present can also be found in the recently published article in the JAM magazine, written by Lindsay Evenden, one of our other partners, and Tanya herself. We will walk you through leading practices and tangible actions that you can take to build resilience within your organization. And of course, it's never too late to put these items in place. So not only will we walk through tangible actions that you can put in place in your organization, or maybe come back to if you've already put them in place in your organization, but Tanya and I will also talk about what are some of the items or what are some of the areas that you can action specifically due to the context that we're living in right now. And I will hand over to Tanya now.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us in our retake webinar. So as Catherine mentioned, one of the key areas to begin if you're looking to build resilience within your organization is to start at the top. So if an organizational objective is to build resiliency, leadership is obviously the first place to start. And so certainly individuals can build resiliency through their own experiences, and many certainly will be doing so right now. But if an organization wants to develop resiliency in its employees more globally, a systematic approach is really required. So like any program, any other training program that you might offer for your employees in areas of competencies, there really needs to be a buy-in from leadership and in commitment to establishing the types of resiliency practices and actions that we'll discuss more today. So for example, you could offer just some basic training to employees, some short sessions specific to resiliency, but unless the practices are embedded in the organization, it won't have lasting impact. So this means modeling behavior. So some of the things Catherine already mentioned, but being transparent, authentic, seeking feedback, being self-aware, fostering self-development. So from your leadership team, these are really important to put in place and to model from the start. It also means communicating commitment. So again, to those practices, not only modeling it, but also expressing the importance of the employees participating and discussing. So for instance, actually looking back at learned experiences, post-mortems after situations occur. So as a way to be aware of how situations can be improved. It also means taking a long view. So understanding that resiliency is not something that you can do in the short term, but it takes time to build and grow like any other competency. So again, resilient leaders are able to manage their stress under pressure. They're adaptable, they can bounce back. And all of this really starts at the top by cultivating resiliency in your leadership.
This is perhaps one of the most crucial items that we will talk about today, and that is creating the environment of trust. Building trust within your organization is fundamental to creating a healthy and engaged workplace. It's also key to building resiliency in your workforce. As Tanya mentioned, this is not something that happens overnight and absolutely involves a high level of engagement and input and buy-in from your leadership. It starts at the top, and its employees will trust a change in process or a new process if they trust their leaders. The healthiest and most engaged workforces are those where employees trust their leaders and feel psychologically safe. During challenging times, high trust organizations will also be more agile and be able to adapt to difficult circumstances. Feeling psychologically safe means being able to speak up, being able to ask difficult questions or engage in challenging conversations. It also means being able to make mistakes and feeling valued and being able to ask for help. Showing vulnerability has not always had the positive perception as it does perhaps more these days. It was often seen or perceived as showing weakness. If leaders were able to demonstrate vulnerability, it meant showing weakness. However, more and more this has changed, this perception has changed, and showing vulnerability is seen as something that's very positive and builds towards a trusting workforce and work environment. Showing vulnerability could mean admitting to mistakes, asking questions. One thing that's also very important as we look to build or create an environment of trust is obviously fostering and encouraging open communication, whether that be through team meetings, one-on-one meetings, small intact meetings. The idea here is to ensure that your communication is open with your employees and your team. We want to make sure that we're allowing space for speaking up so that employees can voice their concerns or ask questions without fears, perhaps, of repercussion or consequences. We want to be able to also encourage providing feedback regularly. This is something we will come back to over the next few minutes, but it's very important to ensure that employees are receiving feedback on a regular basis. This is something that will contribute to them feeling valued and feeling engaged in their work. We also want to be transparent in our decision-making. We want to be transparent about what we do know and what we don't know, but we want to be transparent about how we came to a certain decision, even though our decisions might not always be popular ones.
So having a plan is another really important component of building resiliency in your employees. So obviously having a plan is important for business operations, and it's important to ensure that no matter what situation, you'll be able to thrive despite the challenges. But having a plan also builds trust. And as we've just talked about, it's extremely important in building resiliency. So having plans provides a sense of safety to employees. It helps employees understand that no matter what the situation, the employer has really thought it through and is ready, even if you obviously will have to adapt and change as these, as any plans will have to. But being prepared does give everyone a sense of security. So some of the types of plans to put in place are your emergency measures plans or your contingency plans. But there's also workforce planning. So what types of employees do you need and what types of circumstances? This is not simply for an emergency, but just generally, what are the future plans of your workforce? Does build resiliency in that it ensures that there is future thinking and consideration to how things are moving forward. Similarly, succession plans are always important for both an emergency situation so that there might be positions in place in the event of any crisis or emergency. But in addition, it ensures that there is a forward-thinking plan that again creates a sense of trust in the organization as a whole. Finally, of having business continuity plans or recovery plans is critical in any crisis situation. So again, having a plan does give employees a sense of safety, which fosters trust and builds resilience.
Another area to look at and to consider as you're looking to build resiliency in your workforce is improving your work environment. Of course, a positive work environment will really contribute to a higher level of employee engagement and a workforce that feels supported, which in turn will help foster resiliency or build resiliency in your organization if employees feel relieved, supported, have less stress, and have increased confidence. So what are some of the areas that you can look at when you're looking at improving your work environment? Of course, you could consider looking at allowing for some flexibility in work schedules. This could be looking at enhancing work-life balance for employees by considering part-time schedules, for example, or modified schedules, staggered work hours, for example. Of course, these would have to be relevant and appropriate to your organization, but these are some areas to consider. We mentioned this previously, but of course it's very important, and it's so fundamental, we're going to come back to it now, which is ensuring that there is regular and clear communication and feedback for employees. Sharing feedback on a regular basis really emphasizes this idea of development and it emphasizes how you focus on development for your employees, and this is extremely engaging for employees. This really demonstrates to employees that their contribution is valued. And so it's very important to ensure that you have the practices and processes in place to provide this feedback. You could also look into and consider offering employee assistance programs or health and wellness programs, depending on what is available for your organization. You could look at, in terms of health and wellness, you could look at offering collective meditation, collective get fit initiatives, casual lunches, coffee meetings over Zoom, for example. Setting reasonable work expectations involves looking at not only productivity and being mindful about productivity, but it also means looking and being on the lookout for excessive workload, unbalanced workloads, burnout, and high stress levels. The idea here is that expectations really must be clearly laid out, and you must ensure that you have open dialogue with employees to make sure that these work expectations are clear, and yet that you're not causing further stress by encouraging different types of workload or not addressing workload or problematic areas around workload. Of course, investing in employee engagement strategies is very important, and these could include team building activities, for example, frequent check-ins by direct supervisor, casual, informal catch-up sessions among colleagues, among teams, and things like ensuring a diversity of projects for your different employees. And as already mentioned, surveying employees is a great way to gather that kind of feedback and that engagement. So gathering the pulse of employees at any point is very strongly encouraged. Soliciting feedback is a great way to engage your employees, because of course employees really want it. Well, everyone loves to share, but also to share their feedback. It shows that they're committed to the organization and that they want to participate. Plus, they have great ideas, and it's a super opportunity to hear ideas that maybe management wouldn't have thought of, or HR wouldn't have thought of if they hadn't surveyed and asked the question. When surveying employees, it's a really important idea to share the results. Some employers are uncomfortable with this, but even if you share at a high level survey results, and even if those results are negative, it's really, really important to share them, because otherwise employees will feel like they answered a question and weren't listened to. Even more importantly, if you're able to action ideas, this will be a great way to engage employees. So if someone is able to come up with an interesting or unique idea and you're able to implement it, this will be really engaging. There are many types of surveys, but a few that really support the notions we're discussing are the engagement survey, which can be done in many ways, but it is more typically a bit longer, not always, but it really assesses the satisfaction levels of employees with their work experience, how engaged they are to their employer. A pulse survey can also check in on similar engagement, but it can ask anything. So a pulse survey is just a quick survey on any topic. So for instance, in the current situation, you could ask your employees, how have they experienced the return to work? When we've done such exercises with some of our clients, the results have been, well, perhaps what you might expect, but even those organizations where they feel their employees are quite positive and in the right mind frame, they've discovered that in fact employees are feeling tired and fatigued. So again, these pulse surveys can really give you some insights, and they can be on any topic, and they're short and something that can be done really frequently. And finally, the purpose of the survey is really just to keep the conversation going, so to keep everyone in strong communication, which is always a great practice. The next item to look at is offering training. So as we mentioned previously, resilience is built on attitudes and behaviors, but it's also about learning about oneself, seeking further development, and really focusing on self-awareness. By becoming more intentional, purposeful, we will decrease our negative thoughts and really draw attention to what's meaningful and positive around us. This naturally means that training is an important part or an important component of building resilience. Obviously, the purpose of all training is for growth and development. And here, perhaps we will focus on areas such as soft skills, communication, dealing with difficult conversations, managing stress, managing difficult conversations, problem solving, for example. A key element of building resilience is developing, nurturing, and fostering relationships. And obviously, developing soft skills play an integral role in this area. So again, learning about oneself and focusing our development on self-awareness is very important. We want to focus on growth and development, perhaps paying attention to soft skills. Two other areas that are important to consider are training around mindfulness. So for example, meditation, gratitude exercises, as well as wellness. So developing and promoting an active lifestyle, healthy eating habits, for example.
Looking at your people practices is also a way to build resiliency. So for example, reviewing the lines of governance and accountability is really important because not only does it give you a stronger organization when the decision making is clear and structured, but it also ensures that in times of difficulty that decisions can be made quickly. And it also gives that sense of trust in the organization again, where things are clear, things make sense, and people do actually really appreciate that. Some organizations in a time of crisis, or so in part of their business continuity plan or in their emergency measures plan, will increase the autonomy in decision making. So we'll delegate powers downwards so that decisions can be made even more quickly. So this is something that some organizations may consider as they're looking at developing resiliency in their employees generally. In addition, providing employees with policies and guidelines is another important factor in ensuring that the organization is really structured in a strong foundational way, in such a way to, again, just build that trust in the organization and an understanding that there's a clear plan, that it goes in a strong direction, that everybody knows what their role is and what they have to do. So again, it's a clarity that can help provide both the trust and just the understanding of where things are going. Nevertheless, it's important to foster moments of self-reflection and conduct debriefs after any challenging situation so that the organization can learn and grow. So looking at your people practices, how can you grow and improve them after any situation arises? And also, it's important to ensure that within your people practices, you build connections and prioritize relationships. So again, just ensuring that beyond all of the structure that an organization needs to have in place so that it can make decisions, so that it can ensure a strong foundation, that nonetheless, we understand that there's people behind all of that and that it's through relationships that we're really at our most effective.
So as I mentioned earlier, we are going to shift gears here and we're going to start talking more about in the moment. So when we're referring to in the moment, what are we referring to exactly? We're really referring to this moment, this COVID context that we are all in. Typically, there's no better time to review strategies in terms of building resilience within your organization as in challenging times. However, these are really unprecedented times for all organizations, and this really calls for very targeted actions and very supportive behaviors. So regardless of how the current situation has impacted your workforce, you have no doubt already identified some lessons learned and areas that you would like to look for improvements and that can be leveraged for your organization for the future. Typically, in challenging times, we might start considering what do we need to do and what are some of the recovery strategies that we should put in place and to build and maybe even strengthen resiliency as we look to come out of these turbulent or challenging times. However, in today's context, we are looking more to what we like to call as replenishing strategies. Something to consider as we move through these different priorities, we look at these different priorities, is that we are all in what we are commonly referring to as a fatigue phase. Everyone is fatigued by being on Zoom calls all day, by juggling a new type of work-life balance, by the uncertainty of financial concerns, of juggling working from home as well as homeschooling perhaps. And everyone is fatigued by what we are all seeing as sort of something unending or this kind of increasing or ambiguous context that we're in. All of this is really contributing to impacting what we refer to as our resilience bank account. This is an idea that was promoted by Michael Mattis. This account has been depleted over the last few months. And even if we did a great job or a tremendous job at building up our bank account, our resiliency bank account over previous years or previous months, our account has been so depleted. And now what we want to do, or what we need to do, is focus on replenishing it. We need to look at different ways to replenish our resiliency bank account. We want to come back to this idea of building resiliency, but we need to do it in a gentler way, and we need to do it little by little. During the COVID pandemic, we have supported organizations, very different and varied organizations, faced with unprecedented HR issues in this period and constantly evolving HR practices. Here's a list of some of the key strategies that we've worked on with clients over the past few months and that we feel are the priority areas to look at in the current context. So the first area that we want to talk about is communication. So if you do nothing else, but please do consider some of these other strategies that we are going to be talking to you about. It's very important, obviously, to focus on communication. Communication is really key in situations such as the one we're living right now. Your organization really needs to hear from its leaders. We need to be able to avoid leaving any room for interpretation. We want to communicate what we know. We want to communicate what we don't know. What we know for sure is that hearing from leadership will really appease any stress and any anxiety that your workforce may be feeling, or it will go some ways into appeasing this stress and anxiety. So what we want to do is we want to provide clear and regular communication to employees about many different topics. As we're doing so, as maybe we're increasing our communication to our teams, we want to look at different ways of communicating. So perhaps here we want to consider, what is it we're trying to communicate, and what would be the best channel to use to communicate to our team? Do we want to change it up a little bit? Do we want to make it more interactive, or do we want to simply inform the team of some changes to come? What we want to do also is we want to make sure that employees feel that they can contribute and that they can exchange with leadership. So this is something else that's very important to consider. Another important element that we need to keep in mind is ensuring that we have regular check-ins. So this could be manager to employee, but within teams, also among colleagues. So just making sure that we're all connecting with each other. Obviously, building resiliency is a lot about, having social support. And so, of course, staying connected is a very important element of that. We want to share in a way that inspires confidence. So of course, we want to tackle issues at the forefront of everyone's mind. We want to address certain situations, but we also want to look to the future, to the medium term, perhaps the long term. We want to talk about what are some of the things or some of the interesting strategic projects that we're working on. And this will inspire confidence, and it will inspire, that everyone is contributing to this vision. We want to ensure and encourage questions in many different ways. So look at ways where you can encourage Q&A periods, for example, or different ways of gathering questions from your team. And of course, something that's very important is to listen. So it's make sure that we're listening to our team's concerns, their questions, their comments.
And be available. Be available to the team is right now one of the most important things that anyone can do, whether you're a manager or whether you're a colleague. So making time for ad hoc meetings. We hear from our clients that many people are really even more busy than they've been in the past. And of course, that does make it challenging to make time for ad hoc meetings. But at the same time, given the fact that everyone is so fatigued and really requiring just that extra personal touch could be really appreciated. So just building in a bit of extra time would be a really great way to support your colleagues, or especially your employees if you have a team. And do carve out time to proactively reach out, check in with people. So again, we all sort of seem like we're fine if you just look at it from the surface, but behind the scenes, it is pretty challenging. Balancing kids at home and maybe some kids are, being partly schooled at home or shared days, and it changes every day. It's stressful. So try to take some time to reach out proactively and even discuss non-work topics. It doesn't, reaching out to check in and see how someone's doing is really great, but just be there, have a discussion. How is that Zoom birthday party on the weekend? Or these are ways that we can keep connected, which is so important right now when we're all either virtual, or even if we're in office, we're still in a kind of a strange environment where there's plexiglass all around us. So do try to, keep connected. And as mentioned already, actively listen to one another, see how things are, and just take the time to communicate.
The more you empower your leaders and your team, the more they will thrive and grow. And so, and another thing to consider is that empowerment is closely linked to trust. You need to place trust in your employees, and they need to trust you and ensure that or feel that they're working in a safe space. When we talk about empowerment with leaders, we talk about, providing them with generous boundaries to make decisions, to mobilize their team. It's very important to trust their judgment, trust that they're making the right decisions for their teams and that they're using the right instincts. It's important for your leaders to know that you believe in them. This confidence will obviously foster productivity and engagement at that level, but it will also provide an interesting cascade at different levels of the organization. You want to be able to also enable your teams to seize opportunities to make decisions, to be accountable for their actions. This could mean unleashing some creativity within your teams, giving them a safe space to make mistakes, to take calculated risks, to think outside the box. Teams will really feel motivated if they feel that they have this space and capacity to take opportunities and make their decisions and really contribute, obviously, to the organization and to the team. We really want to ensure as well that our employees feel empowered to take care of themselves and their families. We want to make sure that employees take care of themselves, take care of their families. We want to act with compassion. And we know that everyone is sort of in their own way dealing with many different issues related to this current context. And so it's very important to be mindful of this, but also be compassionate in our approach. We want to, of course, as well, support individuals to build on their strengths and capabilities and play a more active role in their work. So this is perhaps with regards to training and development, praising efforts, providing feedback, looking for opportunities for employees to encourage employees in their development and in their work. The idea here, of course, is not to overburden anyone or overburden any employees, but really provide them and not provide them with additional stress, obviously. It's all about balance.
So be flexible. In times of crisis, being flexible is really key. And yet how that flexibility is required will depend on the circumstance. So in the current pandemic, when we're talking about being flexible, we're really talking about being understanding to the continual changing needs of employees. So offering flexible policies, for example, especially with respect to work hours, working from home, family responsibilities, and most of you have certainly done this already. So it does go without saying, but where it maybe is important to think about right now is, that those flexible solutions that you might have provided probably need continual change and adaptation. So again, to continue to consider what kind of flexibility is being required right now. So maybe a few months ago, it was the flexibility to allow everyone to work from home. Maybe now some of your employees are back in the office while others aren't. So perhaps the flexibility is more around the fact that with some kids having to come home some days, maybe that's where it's more about being flexible in those circumstances. Something to bear in mind when we're all trying to be flexible and support our employees as best we can is to keep in mind internal equity. You can't always treat everyone the same. And certainly there are some employees who must work in the office for whatever reason, and others maybe have more flexibility to work from home, for example, or perhaps some you really have no ability to modify their working schedule, even though they have family at home. But nevertheless, try to find ways to ensure to consider those employees and communicate with them the reasons why, so that you can still give that flexibility to employees, but in a way that still works within your business operations. So be mindful of different types of roles, consider them, but do your best to be flexible however you can.
The key takeaway here about being agile is really being able to pivot. So to turn on a dime, to make quick decisions, to make relevant changes to guidelines, frameworks, policies. We want to ensure flexibility. We want to ensure that we're adaptable to this ever-changing context. We want to ensure, for example, if we make changes to certain policies, that they are clear and that we are engaging our team in understanding and creating shared expectations around changes that are being implemented. We want to be able to adapt to new guidelines that are coming out from public health, for example. We want to be flexible with our work schedules for parents with children if schools close down is another example. Being agile with adjustments or tweaks to policies, for example, provides opportunity, again, to re-clarify what our expectations are, to make improvements and continue exchanging with employees. Clarity will drive purpose for the organization, for employees and the organization. And having clarity will ensure that employees are focusing on the right things and they're not worrying about what is not clear or what they don't know or what they should know. As Tanya mentioned, of course, internal equity is extremely important in this context. And flexibility is really key, as everything that we know is constantly evolving and constantly changing, and we need to stay abreast and make relevant changes for our organization.
And don't forget the fun. We're talking about, and Catherine really explained it so well earlier about the importance of replenishing your employees and the importance of building that resilience bank back. And one of the key ways to do so is the fun. So we're all fatigued, the business, everyone's overworked right now. And it might seem like it's not the time to think about, your social committee, but if there's one time to have a social committee, it's really now, where people more than ever need to connect, where people more than ever need to lighten up a little bit, where people more than ever need to look at the positive and think of what is going well. So keep up those social interactions with team members, and even a smile and humor can go a long way. At Borealis, we're having a virtual pumpkin contest, and this has brought such positivity in our organization, and it really means a lot. It makes a difference, and these aspects are crucial. This can be structured things, you can still find ways to have a holiday party through some kind of online activity or whatever regulations are allowed in your area. But unstructured times can also be really fun, an ad hoc trivia game on a Thursday afternoon, for example. And make use of those social tools and platforms. Obviously, when everyone is working from home, perhaps that's very simple, but when half the office is back and the others are at home, or you have to social distance in the boardroom, perhaps, an online game might be a fun way to connect, or even having people join a video call, even when many people are actually in the office, might be a better way to connect everyone. So don't forget the fun. So important is building resilience and replenishing. And so on that note, in the context of we often think that resilience is personal, that it's about getting through a tough time, building core strength, and certainly that is one aspect of resilience. But resilience can really be nurtured through the practices we talked about today. In the context of an organization, it's about leadership modeling, and building trust that gives employees a sense of security that we'll all get through this together. In the current context, building resiliency is about replenishing your employees. So their resiliency bank is really low. Find creative ways to replenish that, to communicate with your employees, and to just help them and help everyone to just have days that are a little more positive through various means, and focus on what's right in your context. So for some organizations, replenishing your staff might come in the form of, coordinating some wellness activities. For others, it might be more about business continuity. Some might be fun, but others, it might be more just about balance if you have a workforce where most of your employees have young families, for example. And for all employees and all employers, it's a good, when you're thinking about building resiliency, think about connection and bringing your people together. So where to focus? What actions can your organization take today? If nothing else, focus on communications, on listening, and take actions based on what you hear, based on those organizational needs. Consider right now that you need to be kind. It's a tough time that we're all going through, so kindness will go a long way, as well as empathy and compassion. And these activities will really lead you to a more resilient workforce that will be stronger and more equipped once this pandemic is over. So thank you so much for joining us today in our webinar. We do have a resiliency assessment that we'd love you to participate in. So the assessment is how well is your organization doing in supporting employees? This is an online tool. You can fill in the online tool and you'll receive a response immediately. So you conduct this questionnaire based on your organization. So on the next slide, we have the contact information. And I'll also be asking our partner, Lindsay, to join us now as we did have some questions that we received in the live webinar. And so we'd like to ask a couple of them right now. Hey, Lindsay.
Hi. Yeah, we had a few questions that came in. So the first one I'm going to ask Catherine. What do you do if you have a leader that isn't engaged in the process and doesn't seem to care?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question, actually. And I'm sure we've all been faced with this sort of exact situation different times, and perhaps maybe more so in this particular context. I guess my simple answer would be, I would reach out to this individual and I would carve out some time for this individual, because we don't know what's happening behind the scenes with this individual. So I think a one-on-one conversation is very, very paramount. Maybe it's an informal check-in. Maybe it's a conversation around, your level of engagement and their level of engagement, and how they're seeing it and how they're living this particular experience. And so that would be my simple answer, Lindsay. It's probably more complex than that, but I think a check-in, an immediate reach out to this particular individual would be very, very important.
Excellent. So I have a couple of questions here for you, Tanya. The first one is on the surveys. So how can you avoid unmeetable expectations and disappointment from employees by setting unrealistic expectations with surveys?
This is a great question, because it is our instinct to ask really broad questions to gather feedback. But it's really important to think about what you can action as a result. So, if you ask your employees, do you want a raise? The answer is going to be yes. But if you don't have the finances to give a raise, then there really wasn't any point in asking that question. So similarly, think carefully about how you word a question so that it can be actioned on it. It's not to suggest that you shouldn't ask, are employees satisfied with compensation? It's just how we put the question and also how we can action the result is what to think about when designing survey questions.
Excellent. And we'll just ask a final question here, and I'm going to throw this one back to you again, Tanya. So we were asked the question, how does a manager quantify the quality of the organization's employees?
Yeah, and again, a great question. And I think what I mentioned when we were on the live webinar was that obviously that will depend on what we're specifically looking for. So the overall quality, are we talking about the quality of output? Are we talking about the quality of, the performance level of staff? Are we talking about the values, staff competencies in certain areas? So how to assess the overall quality of a team would be to break it down into what we're really looking for. So, that could be competency based, or that could be specific skills, or that could be specific outputs, and then to measure against that. So again, to break down what elements of quality the person would be looking for, the manager would be looking for, and then it would be much easier to quantify or to create some kind of assessment of their staff.
Great. So I think that's it for the questions, and we'll wrap up there. I'm going to just reinforce what Tanya said earlier about the questionnaire. Reach out to us on info@borealamgmt.com. And obviously, if you have any questions on what Tanya and Kate shared today, we'd love to hear from you. So thanks very much for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What was mentioned was our Journal for Aboriginal Management. And that was just sent out yesterday in our e-blast. So Borealis wrote an excellent piece in there on resiliency. So you should certainly check it out and what they wrote. And I'd like to thank our presenters, Tanya Neitzert and Catherine Evans, and all our participants for registering for today's live webinar. I'd like to mention that AFOA Canada is offering several virtual training programs, including online courses, tax clinic training, capacity development workshops, and our certified courses, including our new Indigenous Human Resource Professional Certification. We're just running the pilot now, and and we're getting through it. So we had called it a sold out sort of pilot. And we'll be running the second cohort in January. So certainly you could sign up for that. This week, I'd like to highlight as well our National Virtual Capacity Development Workshops, particularly the new one on not-for-profits board governance, achieving your mission through good governance practices. It's scheduled for November 17th and 18th. This session will be held over 2.5 days, just to ensure that we don't have Zoom fatigue. The workshop is designed to help you gain an understanding of.
So I'll take over from there. Understanding of organizational governance as it applies to not-for-profits. And understanding the roles, responsibilities, and duties for not-for-profit directors, and determine how not-for-profit boards contribute to the mission of their organizations. So register today for upcoming workshops at www.afoa.ca and visit our website for more information to view the recordings and slides that we've added to the webinar page. If you attend 3 of our webinars in this series, you are entered to win a prize and will be contacted by email. Good luck, everyone. Please fill out the survey, which will appear after the webinar. And thank you.